legislation and enforce it and monitor it, that they feel like they don't have to actually live up to the commitments that are in their social and labor plans, etc., to the exclusion and of community members, and just further exacerbating social ills that are prevalent in the mining affected communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Philia. So just the last couple of points then for us to wrap this portion up. So, you know, one of the claims that the Minerals Council, for example, made to the Portfolio Committee is that their projects that they are implementing, besides the fact that they claim a 90% success rate, we are showing you that that's closer to zero. They're also saying that the type of projects that they're implementing are what the community has been asking for. And yet at the same time, they show us that the bulk of their money is going to stuff which the communities are not asking for. From our research, the communities seem to be asking for more employment, skills development, and livelihood options. And across all of the audits that we have done, that seems to be at the bottom of the list of priorities in terms of social and labor plans. Sorry. A lot of people said that the mines needed to be more accountable. There needed to be more consultation and, you know, communication, transparency, openness from the mine to say, this is what we're doing. These are how we are allocating contracts. These are the things that have been one of the claims that the Minerals Council in ignorance, and the mine continues to just do as it pleases. And like I say, no accountability. And then obviously there are still needs for extensive services like water and roads and stuff like that. And also the question of compensation. Communities have noted the fact that even though mines impact on their health, on their heritage, on their culture, on their livelihoods, you know, there's no compensation, there's no appreciation for the fact that communities are directly impacted in this way. So when we look at the overall picture of the MPRDA and how the mining sector pans out, we see that, you know, government takes according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, right? They do an annual report on the mining sector across the world, but in South Africa, they also do one. And if we look, and they take the top 80% of the JSE listed mining companies, and they look at how that companies stack up. So if we look at their figures, then government takes approximately 24% of value created. Employees, which includes management, takes up to 47%, and then shareholders take a whopping 29% of value reported. While community investments, according to our calculations on value reported in the PricewaterhouseCoopers reports, 0.9% of that value that mining companies report on the financials is allocated to community development projects. The Minerals Council, in its report to you in November, actually said that in terms of its sales, only 0.15% of sales is allocated.
Mr. Routledge.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Routledge, just a minute. Is Chair Luzipo in the platform?
Yes, I'm here, Honorable Matlaule, but still on the road. Continue, don't worry.
No, if I was to continue, Chair, I would say the program says that MACUA will have the first presentation until 10:02. We're at 10 o'clock now. How far are you, MACUA, to finish with the presentation?
We have 2 slides to go really.
Okay, let's proceed in 5 minutes. Let's wrap up.
Can I request Chair, that because their main submission was on the social audit. If Chris, you are chowing that time, it means it will impact on the next two other items. But I know that your main submission was on the social audit.
Yes.
I think that's, you must try and accommodate yourselves on the next two items, because as you know that in our discussion, 12:30 by committee is
Yes.
the cut of time. Okay.
Agreed, Chair. Thank you very much.
But you can continue, Honorable Marshal, because the car will make noise.
Thank you very much. Right. So essentially, after all what we presented, we say we are calling on the portfolio committee specifically to facilitate the inclusion of MACUA and WAMUA and mining affected communities more broadly and civil society partners, so that the voices of affected communities can be on multi-stakeholder policy engagement structures, such as MIGDET or other structures that may emerge. One of the proposals we want to make to the committee is around the transformation committee, which ironically is in support of the Minerals Council's proposal to you as well. But we'll get to that later. We are calling on the committee to ensure that the law is structured so that communities have an opportunity to provide input throughout the policy-making and law-making process. Because when it comes to a written comment stage, that's a bit too late, because already the decisions have been taken and, people have agreed amongst themselves what it is that they want to achieve, which excludes communities. And the core part of what we're saying is community voice must be there so that there is a fairer and more equitable and just outcome that is derived from the law. We're calling on enhancements to the manner in which broad public participation processes are conducted, but we can get into the detail of that later. The commencement of a process aimed at amending the MPRDA is critical so that we begin to deal with this crisis before it becomes a storm, before it becomes something that we are going to struggle to get out of. We still have the opportunity now to correct the law, to make sure that its outcomes are more equitable and just. The jurisprudence around community rights has been evolving as well. And one can look at the Maledu and Beleni judgments amongst others. And so the law, being 20 years old as it is, needs to, in any case, adjust, given that we are going to have the discussion around the mining charter later. The need to adjust the law is emerging very clearly. And then obviously one of the things that fell out of the mining charter issue, and we'll deal with later, is the targets for women. And then we're asking on the portfolio committee to demand accountability from the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy for the lack of oversight that the DMRE is exercising over the transformation agenda in the sector. We feel that there needs to be more accountability. Why is it that a social audit report like we've just presented is possible? We have to fix that. We demand that the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy also be held to account for its failure to uphold the law. The fact that we've lodged these non-compliance issues and they've just not responded, whether it's through capacity or lack of will, I guess the committee will have to decide on. In terms of the DMRE itself, we're saying that it is clear that the DMRE is not able to manage the existing areas that it needs to regulate. And we're calling on the DMRE to place a moratorium on issuing mining license and prospecting license until we can adequately account for the failures to hold current mining holders' license to account. What's the use of adding more fuel to the fire when you can't maintain or you can't manage the existing fire? Account for the continued reduction in compliance budgets. So linked to this is, if you look at the budgets that is being approved for the DMRE, they are increasing their sales and advocacy to get mining companies to come to South Africa, but they are reducing the budget for compliance. There are less and less people employed in compliance. And how is that going to work? We are creating a disaster. So they have to account for that. Commit to the principles of Batupele, because again, communities, when they deal with it, with the DMRE, it's just egregious. They don't get any respect. There's no avenues for them to deal with. It's just a disaster. We're asking the DMRE to commit to investigating the non-compliance that we're bringing to light in this report, that they commit to immediately publishing the annual compliance reports. That's another area. Those annual compliance reports are being held captive by the DMRE. So we don't know what the mining companies are doing. And as you can see, in the absence of the light, in the darkness, they are deceiving South Africa. Mining companies are deceiving South Africa because they're not delivering. We're asking them to commit to urgently revising the SLP regulations to ensure that the SLPs and IDP commitments are clearly delineated and accounted for. So in other words, we need to make sure what is for the broader IDP and what is for directly affected communities. We ask that the DMRE notifies all the regional officers and license holders of the regulations with regard to the right of communities to access information, because that still remains a huge, huge problem. Commit to urgently reviewing regulations which impose burdens on communities when seeking access to information. And we've spoken briefly about that, but because of time, I'm going to end it there. The rest, I'm sure you will read. So in summary, members of the Portfolio Committee, communities are completely excluded. They're at the mercy of powerful actors. And you as the lawmakers, the people who have the opportunity to right the wrongs, this is the opportunity. All the cards have been dealt, and they're laying and they're telling us that the MPRDA needs to be amended. Community interests must be accounted for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can you continue, Honorable Mashaule, please?
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm worried about the compliance and the rules of Parliament on this, since you are still on the platform. But if other members are not objecting to that, I'm happy to continue. Can I thank you very much, MACUA, for the presentation. You have finished at 9 past, as we had indicated. You'll have to accommodate your time in that regard. Honorable members, there is the presentation. Can I note hands which wants to engage the presentation? Ayanda and Ari, can you also assist me with the hands? I don't see any hands so far. Okay, I think I've seen one.
From Malinga.
There's Malinga. Any other hands? Okay. Maybe we'll get hands as and when we go. Honorable Malinga.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope I am audible. I am in the rural Mpumalanga. Am I audible?
Yes, okay. You are audible. Can you proceed? Okay, let me note Honorable Madokwe as well, after Honorable Malinga. Can you proceed?
Greetings to yourself, members of the Portfolio Committee, the MACUA delegation, committee staff, and everybody on call. Chairperson, I hope I heard the chair or Ms. Boss giving apologies to, in an effect that the DG is not on the platform. I hope we have somebody who's acting on his behalf on this platform. Chairperson,
the DG is on the platform.
Oh, okay, all right.
DG Mbele is on the platform.
I heard the apology that is out of the country. My apologies, Chair. Chairperson, I had hoped that MACUA will start by apologizing to the portfolio committee. Maybe I did not get it because my network is up and down on their behavior when we were doing our public hearings on gas amendment bill. I thought maybe they will apologize and give us the reasons why they disrupted our public hearings. But nonetheless, hopefully, Mr. Christopher or whoever represents MACUA will give us their apology when they respond. Chairperson, I welcome the presentation by themselves. And as myself and the organization that I represent, I am for the social labor plans. We are very biased to social labor plans, and we are biased to mining companies ensuring that where they mine, the community benefits. My proposal, Chair, is that can we, as the portfolio, we note what they have presented to us. Can we, as the portfolio committee, maybe converse among ourselves on the issues that were presented to us than to think on our feet? If MACUA can, it's my proposal, Chair. If MACUA can give us that opportunity, I'm not sure, Chair, given the packed program that we have as the portfolio, if we can maybe find a day that we can engage among ourselves on the issues that are here in front of the portfolio committee. That will be my proposal, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Malinga. Honorable Matokwe.
Thank you, Chairperson of the session. I'd also like to welcome the report and also appreciate the report from MACUA and also greet everyone that's in the meeting. I actually would want to support the proposal by Member Malinga, but over and above that, perhaps what I would request, because I know that in the presentation they also alluded to the fact that there are a number of complaints and a number of reports that they have sent to the department, and those reports were never responded to. If we can perhaps have like a compilation of those reports and complaints, and then also when were they submitted, so that they can be referred to the DMRE, so that in the meeting, I'm hoping that then we can then in the meeting that we will be deliberating on this report some more, then maybe the department would also then be able to account on our side in terms of what has been their response or what has been their action, and where there's been no action, then what becomes the way forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matokwe. Is there any other member who wants to say something on this matter before we give a way forward? Okay, no. I am inclined to agree to the proposal made by Honorable Malinga, precisely because MACUA now has our attention as the committee, because they followed the proper processes and a decorum to get our attention, unlike in the past, where there was no decorum in the way in which they interacted with us. It made me even wonder whether these mining companies, when they are engaged by MACUA, isn't it the same attitude that they are given, and in return have a bad attitude towards meeting the communities? It makes me wonder, because before this meeting, I was thinking, what is it that we will say to each other with MACUA, because we know them not to have a decorum. And I must say, I'm very impressed that today we're having this conversation from a point of view where there's also research that gives us a way to look at the mining companies and lack of seeing through their commitments. We'll be able to look at the department and say, but there has been engagement that MACUA has initiated with you. Why are you not responding? I'm saying you have leveled the ground for us to be able to move forward. You have our attention, and therefore we will make time and sit among ourselves to look at what you have raised, comparing it with obviously the mining houses themselves on the report that you have produced. And I must say I'm very happy that we're working on something that has got decorum, facts, and well researched, well presented, unlike in the past. So I want to thank the MACUA for this presentation, and I will give them time to respond to what has been raised. But in the main, we are saying that you have our attention, and we will give this presentation necessary attention and engage among ourselves and have a way forward. Can I give Mr. Routledge and your team?
Thank you, Chair. I believe that our national coordinator is in the meeting. Mr. Mangula, I wonder if I can allow you to go first before I respond.
Hopefully I'm audible. Greetings to everyone, to the PC committee. Thank you for really giving us time to present our research and giving us time to talk to you. We really appreciate it. It's highly appreciated. And we believe that is now this platform will definitely assist us in sorting out the problems that we are facing of non-compliance from the mines, and have platform again with the DMRE to sort out our problems, and even in the regions as well, because that's what was really troubling our communities. But in all, again, I think on the issue of leadership who indicated the issue of disturbing the issue of the gas, I think it was through frustration of communities of again, meaningful consultation to really engage, to understand what is happening, because believe me, we have a lot of issues of communities being forcefully removed, having cracked houses by the mines, and a lot of things that are happening. So it was really not to disrespect, but to force a platform where we can engage in a meaningful way. You know, we talk about free, prior, informed consent that should be legislated so that we can be given that leverage to be able to say what is that is frustrating communities. And we have even definitely consulted the MRE and gave them the reports of what are the issues that we are facing. But the answer was that we don't have capacity to monitor all these mines. And I think Comrade Routledge put it very well to say, how do you continue issuing licenses when you are failing, you don't have capacity to manage or regulate the mines that are there on not non-compliance, because we have proven to them. But unfortunately, it fell into deaf ears. We've seen communities not being consulted, mining coming in without any understanding, and of people, to raise their concerns around those issues. So we believe that if this platform of this kind is open to us, we won't be seeing issues of friction amongst ourselves, but we'll see issues of correcting the wrongs that were being done and making sure communities where they're hosting mines, they benefit correctly so and uplift their life. And we'll see solving the issue of inequality, because when you go in a mining area, you smell poverty, and it's supposed to have, opposite of that. So based on such, we believe that if there is monitoring of these mines, we'll definitely see a change in our communities, alleviating poverty, inequality, and starvation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Routledge, ordinarily, for us to maintain decorum in Parliament, we respect protocol, meaning between you and the national coordinator, I don't know who becomes senior, but I see a hand of Mr. Paps Litoko. We ordinarily do not recognize any other hand that is not coming from you or whoever is coordinating the team. For an example, if the department was presenting to us, it's the DG who would, I hand over to the DG and the DG would point out who must speak on what issue. I can't recognize any other hand that is not an honorable member or a member of parliament. We are giving MACUA through you, Mr. Routledge. I don't recognize any hands outside that. You will be the one who directs who must speak on what issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mhlaule. Appreciate it. Mr. Paps Litoko is with our delegation. Mr. Paps will be speaking later to the committee around the artisanal mining and the question of legality of informal mining. So if I may, Mr. Chair, with your permission, allow Mr. Paps to just make a brief point.
Yes, thank you very much, Comrade Chris. I just wanted to inquire, because I've heard on your response as Parliament, the issue of what was your response on the issue of illegal mining? Because I think I missed on your response with regards to that.
No, sure, Paps, we are going to still deal with that section, so if you can just bear with us. So, Mr. Chair,
thank you.
Just briefly then summarize what Ms. Madokwe and Malinga had been referring to. So the question of our engagements with the portfolio committee came up, and I think our leader did deal with it very well. Suffice to say, Chair and members, that we have documented a very long history of engaging with both the DMRE and the portfolio committee since 2012, since the formation of MACUA in 2012, through 2013, when the amendments to the MPRDA was up for discussion, right through all of the different ministers, right up until Minister Mantashe came on board and scrapped the MPRDA process, the mining charter process, and all of that good stuff. So we have a long history of engaging with both the portfolio committee and the DMRE with very little success. And as Mishak indicated, that this has led to a lot of frustrations on our part, even so much so that just recently after our meeting in March, so you must understand how this comes about. We had a meeting with the portfolio committee in March. in which certain commitments were made. The minister was going to meet with us, and he committed in the portfolio committee meeting to meet with us. He set up the meeting at the last minute. He cancelled, and he's never come back to us to have that meeting again. We wrote to the portfolio committee to say, look, you and I and the minister, we agreed that we would have this meeting to try and iron out these issues. It hasn't happened. We're asking the portfolio committee to intervene, and we've just had no responses. We've had no engagements from the portfolio committee, and that breeds frustration. So much so that we wrote a number of letters to the portfolio committee over last year, asking for engagement so that we can, move these issues forward and bring this report to your attention. And then eventually there was a decision taken to escalate our actions of civil disobedience in order to get the attention of the portfolio committee. Now, it's always very, very sad when citizens have to resort to protest in order to get their voices heard. It would be much preferable if we can have engagements like we are today in a cordial manner with decorum, and as Mr. Shloli correctly says, with facts and information at our disposal. So we are very happy that we are at this point, as you indicated. And as we indicated to the management committee of the portfolio committee last week, we are not so much interested in the past as we are in the future. It is what we do today and what we do in the future that is going to really be of importance. We are happy to let bygones be bygones and say that we misunderstood each other in the past, and that at least now we are talking to each other, and that is the important part. Mr. Shloli, as far as it goes with regards to mining companies, we can say that we deal with mining companies with respect. We write to them as would be proper. We request meetings, we request information, and we do have an ongoing engagement with them. We have a legal department that writes letters to mining companies and asks for proper engagement. So it's not as if we are just rocking up at a mining company in a protest and demanding unreasonable stuff. We are trying to be constructive in the way that we contribute towards the building of South Africa, because we believe it's time for all of us to really put our hands up and to contribute in a meaningful way. And so we are trying to do that, and we are very happy that the portfolio committee has acknowledged that and is meeting us in this process. So we cannot apologize for protesting ever. That is a constitutional right, and for marginalized people, it is often the last resort. At least now we have avenues to discuss, so it's certainly not the last resort for us at the moment. And so again, thank you very much for that opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm getting an indication that the Chair is back on the platform and the network has improved. Chair.
Okay, thank you, honorable members, MACUA and WAMUA. Thank you. Thank you, Whip, for standing in. Now, the rules are simple, Whip, where I'm sure members will understand. We vote only if the chairperson is not part of the meeting. At this stage, the chairperson is part of the meeting, but was unable to participate in the meeting. And I'm sure we know, all of us, that these meetings are open to the public, and we need to respect the public. And therefore, the technical challenges I had, most definitely I had to, in respect of the meeting itself, but also in respecting the public, to show some decency and not disrupt the same meeting that we convened and in the main called by the same chairperson. So now feel free, you didn't commit anything wrong. I can request any member, if I'm unable to participate, or my participation in the meeting will be a problem. Two, Chris, when you work, I think the simple thing, honorable members, to say is that maybe the meeting was made a little bit poorer with the challenge I had. I would have thought, Chris, in my absence, you will just say that there has been an engagement between the leadership of MACUA and the leadership of the committee. And unfortunately, the whip at that time could not be present in the meeting due to some commitment he had. But in simple terms, we were able to find one another. We had to take them through the rules of Parliament, including how committees of Parliament operate, because we felt it was necessary to have that discussion so that when we meet, we don't start afresh, throw mud at each other. If we needed to do so, let's just dispense of that. And then in the meeting of today, like this one, we then deal with the gist so that we understand that our differences are not based on attitudes, but our differences will be based on facts. And there's nothing wrong to disagree with regards to that. And all the issues that had happened, like they are saying, we agreed that from now onwards, we must have a very courteous, if there is such an English word, way in which we relate to one another. Our doors will remain our doors open. Maybe just to put them to anyone at ease, one of the things that we have said is that this committee is represented by different parties, and it is impossible that all of them can develop a particular attitude against one or any other entity. For an example, you've got 6 from the ANC, you will get 5 from the opposition parties, 2 from the DA, 1 from the EFF, and 1 alternate from the EFF, but there's one with 1 alternate who is consistent, whose apologies made. You have 1 which is from the IFP, and 1 from the ATM, and 1 alternate, or 2 alternates, which is 1 from the AIC and 1 from the from the PAC. Of those, any member of Parliament, if he receives any correspondence, is allowed to present that to the committee, and the committee will have to develop an attitude on that. But having said that, I think from the presentation, because at least I listened to almost 99% of the presentation made. I think for me, honorable members are correct. The presentation makes more sense. In fact, MACUA, there's one thing that when good work is done, we must appreciate, is that you are giving us a scientific exercise that you wanted to bring to their attention. And in my view, this is what we have to tackle heads on. Criticism should not be an issue. In fact, they must make us much stronger and to deal with issues. I think some of the things we must agree that they might be a reflection of a general problem that even ourselves as members of Parliament, we are faced with from time to time. And as members have said, unfortunately, when you make a presentation, the committee has to go back and deliberate on that presentation, having asked questions of clarity, and it will then come back and say, this is what we think might happen. But what I think for me, the committee will take into consideration is that your research talks to specific, not general, to specific areas or companies that conducted your work. And therefore, it makes it much more easier for the committee to make an exercise. I'm not sure enough for me today, but it's about to answer on those. And if it means you need responses, I'm sure the committee will decide that. If it does come back again, defend your findings against those that you have made the findings on, including the department. It will decide the committee at that point whether to do such. But in the meantime, I think even without the committee, that we don't create some unnecessary expectations. Unfortunately, committees of Parliament the manner and the nature of their operation is not about recognition of structures. I'm sorry to tell the truth, but that's the reality. The reason, for example, we get a business is simple because in the social partners platform like Netlab, most of these entities are recognized as four. You've got the government, you've got business, you've got the community structure. Where some of the labor you will find looking to the portfolio committee, it is not them that are. For example, I can assure you, when we go out for research and conduct oversight, we don't go and ask the unions to do presentations to us. We go and ask the companies to account, talk to workers. It is up to the unions then to organize themselves when we are there as unions that will be making presentations, but we talk to workers because recognition is another matter. That is why you find that most of those unions in Netlab, to put it simple, they are represented by their own structures. But I would say for now, for the sake of alleviating your concerns, you are allowed, and my question to do exactly that designate somebody who would look at the proceedings and every activities of the portfolio committee, brief the leadership of MACUA and WAMUA that there is this matter that we might have an interest on, and on the basis of that, you are entitled and allowed to write back to the portfolio committee and say, for example, if we were to go out now and conduct an oversight on the social and labor plan, there is nothing wrong to bring to the attention of this committee that, in fact, where you are directed, we don't think it is a correct or direct place to go. We are of the view that here is the issue, the areas that you need to attend to, and then we'll take that into consideration. And if then you say, based on the fact that we know that the committee's intention is to do 1, 2, and 3, then you are able to advise the committee that before it undertakes that, can it consider these areas? We are doing this because if we were to do a platform of recognition, the difficulty that we'll have, somebody will come and say, but how did you choose this one and leave these other ones? So the question of operations of the committee do not necessarily even need a structure. If somebody who might be a member or even an individual of MACUA or WAMUA writes to the portfolio committee and say, here is my take on these matters of what I'm bringing to your attention, the committee can't just say, no, an individual. It must then look at the matter raised. And based on the matter raised, it must then see whether this is a matter that it requires to be tackled. So every correspondence that is sent, it gets the attention of the committee, then the committee will then develop an attitude. But as we have said, that we will be able to revert back to yourself and then say, what do we think is the way forward? But some of the issues may not even have to wait for you to come back and hear what is happening. They may require us to tackle and deal with them immediately head on and keep on if there's any matter. Lastly, you are free also to engage with our staff that is responsible, especially for research and development, so that they can keep us informed as a committee on new areas of development. So we won't let these things to go without attending to it thoroughly. Beside that, can I give your presentation to the 2 items, the mining court outcomes as well as the mining? You choose which one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me just say before we start on that presentation, that I think it may be important for us to just clarify that there are 2 areas of representation that we are concerned about. The one is about speaking to the portfolio committee, and I think we've clarified that very clearly, that we will write to the portfolio committee from time to time, as we have been doing. And hopefully, going forward, we would have a better relationship and better understanding between us so we can deal with the issues. But the second element of representation that we are concerned about is at a legislative level, regards to how the industry is set up. The core point of our presentation was that communities are excluded at very important points of the legislative process, of the regulatory process, of the governance process. And we think that a process of the amending the law or reassessing the law in light of those shortcomings is important, so that community voices are located within the discussions. As you correctly point out, NEDLAC is set up in a way that is supposed, at least in theory, to have those voices represented. And the point of our argument is so the voices of community, labor, and business and government represented in a forum, so that decisions can be taken that is equitable and fair and just and advances the nation as a whole. And in the same way, we're saying that within the mining sector, those four community interest sectors need to be represented. The one that is not represented there is community, and that is what the law needs to be adjusted towards. But I appreciate the PC will deliberate on that and will come back to us on that at a later stage. So our presentation on the mining charter is a lot less, there's a lot less going on because we've dealt with most of the issues. I'm just trying to find the presentation. There we go. Okay, found it. All right. So, with regards to the mining chair, more specific to our comments and thoughts on the judgment handed down in September of last year, in which MACUA was to that case. We joined the case after the minister had argued in court that all parties that were necessary to deliberate on the mining charter were not present. And specifically, the minister indicated that community interests were not at the table. And so the minister then asked the court to enjoin those parties. We were then enjoined to the court case as interested and affected parties, and we made submission that, and we were deeply disappointed with the outcome, even though it wasn't completely unexpected. So where do we stand with regards to the mining charter? We're saying that based on our presentation, if one looks past the box-ticking exercise of the Minerals Council, the numbers that present the Portfolio Committee, and we look at the alternative view that we've presented today, then we can say that the mining sector remains largely unfunded. That seems to be okay, and it's reflected in the inequality that still exists in society, the high unemployment rates, and the ownership structures, of course. So the chair dropped out, but he's back now. So the RDA, as it currently stands, has objective to ensure the holders of mining rights contribute towards the socio-economic development of the areas in which they operate. We have hopefully shown to the committee that this is at best questionable, and at worst, it is a exercise in subterfuge, in hiding the real truth. And that, has a problem of regular issues, but it is a concern that the sector remains largely untransformed. The mining charter, we thought, in a situation where there was proper stakeholder engagement with communities and where the mine is able to introduce buying implications and penalties, and with open auditing process, would have been, and in our mind still remains, the most practical way to work towards a collective target for transformation. But obviously, as that the judgment removed the option from the range of tools we have at our disposal. Despite Minerals Council again arguing that there's no change within the MPR and that the MPR has adequate measures to deal with this, we reject that completely. Reject it for the reasons they presented previously and show that development of communities is just not happening, and it needs a specific legislative intervention. We're saying that the current legislative accountability measures, where they exist, are vague. They do not provide targets, and they do not provide reporting standards. So we know who's doing what they're doing, how they're doing. It's a vague thing out there in the legislative. The legislative have no adequate penalties. So they do not provide the correct incentives or the correct pay for mining companies to actually engage in them. It is very clear from the Mineral Council and the companies know that they only do as much law demands them to do. They've made this very, very clear. Where a law is where it's vague, where it's it's not affecting their mind, they will continue to pay lip service to it. They will continue to use it as a profit side. It's very clear that mine companies, despite their claims to save, are often nefarious players in the sector, and we point countless examples of this through. So there's no transparency in the current setup with line licenses, where the minister is not compelled to reveal the compliance boards, is not compelled to have data on which my company can be held down. That for the sector is against transformation. You cannot have transformation in dark information done in the light. That's an absolute requirement. We know that the mines, being a continuation of the state that is colonial at times, even though it's a democratic state, have a historical, ethical, and legal obligation to ensure the social and economic welfare of all South Africans, and mines carry specific to the people who are impacted by democracy. As the MP of the correctly said in its objective, it's that the holders of mining rights have an obligation to contribute towards the economic development of the areas in which they operate, because they have a direct impact on communities. They pollute the water, they pollute air, they remove our heritage culture, and so there is a price to be paid. So we say it is urgent, absolutely necessary for this portfolio committee to start the process of engaging in legislative reform, bring into line the elements that we lost through the judgment. We need to get those elements into law in order to hold mining companies to account. We do, however, support the call by Mancosa for a transformation council that includes community, labor, industry, and Department of Mineral Resources, so that all parties can meet quarterly, at least quarterly, discuss information in structured and consistent way, and so that hopefully lead towards a legislative proposal that would be broadly acceptable to all parties, redress the shortcomings of the current legislation with regards to transformation and development of communities. We do reject the claim that mining art judgment has uncovered is merely one of a lack of standardized reporting. It shows that there is a main lack of focus on the development of communities within that process. So if the law is not mandating companies to engage with communities in a more consistent way, they will continue to ignore the developmental objectives and impediments that come with the mining rights. This can only be remedied if a more split in interests to ensure the transformation and the severe consequence for non-compliance, together with greater transparency and a greater forward to communities and how mining is to account. It's changed our charter, so that's why we weren't too worried about the previous time that we took. In that this what happened, so that the committee might have some questions around this stuff. Thank you.
No, do them both.
Okay. Okay. As regards to mining, I'm going to hand over to Pastor Letoka in a little while. Let me just fill our question this way. As far back as 2016, MACUA had called and hosted a conference, which we believe was the very first conference in South Africa to exclusively discuss the issue of artisanal miners. Because it was very clear to us from our work committees that this question of artisanal miners was a challenge, because they were being criminalized. Criminalized in South Africa is problematic. And so we raised the issue, but the fact that we have been approached by miners, artisanal miners, and we had started to them where we mobilized thousands of us to the DMRE and to demand that they be legalized. As many of you know, eventually those miners were granted a permit mine. They still doing, and it's gone some way, at least the immediate crisis that was emerging in Kimberley at the time. So here's an example of an area that needs to be legislated, which wasn't dealt with adequately in the NRDA, and which we engaged the DRE as far back as 2016 on the need to amend the legislation to deal with this question. As the timeline shows, that the DRE failed to deal with in an appropriately urgent manner. In 2018, we made a submission to Minerals and Pro with regards to the need to regulate artisanal mining. We took note that the DMRE started a process in 2018 to do comparative research projects in other jurisdictions with regards to how they dealt with the ASM sector. We ourselves, with Wits University and Action Aid South Africa, we undertook a scoping exercise of the artisanal mining sector. That information is available to the public. It's on our website, and we have to share that. It was, in our opinion, we haven't seen anything else yet in the sector, the most extensive survey of artisanal mining, which showed how the economy being developed through this artisanal mining, how these miners at the local level were generating income, how that income was spreading into the community and value, and in essence, doing what the MPRDA said to do, which is to distribute the wealth of the resources in a way that the MPRDA is not able to. MPRDA is very much focused on mining operations. It has an element of small-scale operations, small-scale mining, but there again, we think about, in terms of those are big projects which artisanal miners are able to access. Artisanal mining does offer us the opportunity, and research shows it very clearly, how artisanal mining impacts the extent of it, where they're located, how they're located, what the sector is, and so we've done that research. That research led to a process of engagement with the miners, and ending together actually others. We work with miners to form a association of artisanal miners, the National Association of Artisanal Miners. Paps Letoka, who is MACUA, is also the chairperson of the national. So he's been active. Then by 2020, the DMR started to invite to comment on the policy. In 2021, they published the policy, and 2022 now what can only be termed the policy. This is where we alerted the DMR into the need to adjust the law so that it can deal with this challenge. And we are located to deal with it. So we hope that the MPRDA will crisis, the opportunity to think is not taken, so that we avoid the crisis that is obviously coming at us in the north. So we say that there are 4 key areas that drive this problem of artisanal mining, or some like to call it illegal mining, because there are illegal mining operations. We don't deny that. We have high unemployment. At the same time, we have over 6,000 mines, unused mines that are sitting there in maintenance, have high levels of inequality and low levels of nation. So 4 factors, we believe, come together in a way that is brewing a storm of illegal mining. We that the solution lies in utilizing these proper resources and bringing them to use AUM to reduce unemployment. Here, we have banned mines, big unused mines. In this way, we distribute broad-based people, not only legal, to a broad of people. It gives people something tangible to give purpose. And when somebody has a purpose and is working productively, they have the potential to become productive. So we're saying that's the way for us to go. We that the draft mining policy has some good things that Africa can give before. There are no problem that remains. So, and all that, I'm going to hand over to deal with this in more detail.